Cocoon Spawn Girls, Chapter 38. Mare led us down a long hallway before leading us down a flight of stairs. We curved along with the wall as we descended to a lower floor. I wonder how many floors there are. We made our way, passing by a few doorways before entering through a pair of connected wide doors, walking into a dining room with a long table. Along the table ran a beautiful tablecloth, decorated in autumn symbols and colors. There were enough places set for a much larger guest list than just us. I began to wonder if we would be having company. As I followed Clarice, who was following Mare, to the other side of the table, I counted 5 placemats set up on either side of the table, with another 2 setting at either head of the table. Clarice took a seat at the furthest seat on the left-hand side of the table from the door. I took a seat beside her. Mare made her way around the table and took a seat directly across from Clarice. I assumed the head of the table would end up being Dr. Aegil. The tableware looked very fancy. Although I guess if I try to picture tableware that looked poor, I just picture fast food plastic ones. So maybe I'm not the best judge. Dr. Aegil emerged from behind a door. In his arms he was balancing a few dishes, which he began to set down along the table. "I present to you all of our dinner for this evening." He set down a tray with a roasted chicken on it. "For those that enjoy the more natural taste of a meat flavor when receiving their fix, I present a guinea fowl with a light salt rub." He then moved on to the next, before I was even done taking in the appealing smell of the fowl. "This is a simple sliced watermelon, which has been lightly dusted in spawn essence. I find it sits well in even the most troubled magical girl's stomach." That sounded appealing. Flashbacks of my last meal played in my mind. He sat down the third dish. Slices of fish, I believe? "This is a selection of Arctic char fillets, which I've prepared slightly different, each for a more personalized experience for all. I do hope you'll try some and enjoy their buttery flavor." With his hands now empty of trays, he clasped his hands together. "Now, for tonight's beverage. I'd like to offer wine, but based on the average age present, I'll instead suggest we enjoy some flavored water." He walked off back into the kitchen, returning with small, colorful pods which he set down on the table. "Please, go ahead, help yourself." He motioned for us to all enjoy. Clarice did not hesitate to grab a knife and began cutting into the fowl, while Mare began helping herself to a slice of watermelon, nibbling on it. I went ahead and took a small cut of the fillet, hesitantly taking a nibble, and being surprised by its rich, smooth texture. As I chew my second bite, I almost began to notice how sore my head had been feeling without me noticing. The enriching chemicals placed on the food entered into my bloodstream, returning me to my proper state. It felt good to have our drug pumping through us again. "Now, girls, I imagine I can answer some questions for you." Dr. Aegil smiled as his eyes stayed on his knife, cutting into a piece of roast fowl. I pull out my writing board, which I had made sure to bring with me. "Is Aurelia here, or did she leave? When?" Dr. Aegil reads my board. "I did hear you were seeking Aurelia, but is she the one you're actually looking for? I've heard otherwise." Not an answer. "We are looking for a magical girl named Marcia. She disappeared with Aurelia." "Marcia, you say? The girl with the beast ability? Yes." Dr. Aegil adjusted his glasses with his open palm. "Aurelia had been staying here at the request of a newly appointed den ruler Declarna. You know her, I am aware. She had been staying with us a few days while awaiting a signal from Declarna to make use of her and Mara's abilities." Declarna had thought up her scheme days in advance. I was frightened of how she could have known things would play out the way they did. My uneasiness towards her wouldn't be lifted any time soon. "I believe she left right before you arrived," Dr. Aegil continued. "Although there is a remote possibility she might be somewhere inside the castle, and I'm just unaware." He turned to Mare. "You didn't send her out, right?" Mare looked up from her watermelon, juice across her face. "No, thank you." Dr. Aegil nodded. "I thought so." He looked back over to me. "Those with contracts can be a bit unpredictable, so I can't even say for sure what she'll do." "I actually wanted to ask about something similar," Clarice spoke up. "It's about your name. It's a moniker, isn't it?" I raised an eyebrow at Clarice. I hadn't caught anything weird about his name. I was frankly very confused. "Whatever do you mean?" Dr. Aegil playfully smirked, awaiting her response. "Aegil is a grimoire named for the spirit of Saturn. You wouldn't happen to have some relation to Saturn? Anything that might have led you to become the one ruling over the spawn den?
Ha! Dr. Agil smiled. Nothing gets past you when it comes to our celestial bodies, huh? Pulsar has been filling your heads with lots of info. He really shouldn't be.
He looked down at King.
I mean, it's like a kid trying to sit at the adult table. Why don't you stay out of the larger body's business?
He laughed. It made me uncomfortable. You're not denying it. Good on you. But we both know a man can't actually be the one holding the contract. Clarice pointed at Mare. So is she the one contracted to Saturn?
Afraid not, Dr. Agil sighed. My dear Mare is nothing but your typical magical girl.
He threw his hands up to his sides with his head lowered.
No, Saturn has never been interested in us. But you're right, I am a worshipper of it.
Claire looked confused, glancing at King to check his reaction.
So what? Allow me to just enrich you with both our tales, and how we came to rule this den. I'm sure it would provide some wonderful meal entertainment to you both.
With that, Dr. Agil began to tell us the story of how he came to be here.
When I was a boy, I was fascinated by space movies and the wonderful beauty of what it might be out there in the great unknown. I would save my money just to buy model rockets to launch on the weekends. It was truly a wonderful time, back when the infinite space above us felt so unknown. I grew up, and as I did, I continued on with my love of space and what it could provide for us. I studied hard and began college studying engineering, hoping to one day get to be one of the lucky few who got to work on spacecrafts. While in college, I couldn't help taking astrology and anything else related to space. That is where I would gain so many strange skills that would one day lead me to where I am today. I graduated with a bachelor's and immediately went back for my master's. When I finally emerged again, I knew that the space was just waiting for me. But then the only space I began to see was all on acceptance letters from potential jobs. No good space program wanted me, and then no just okay programs wanted me either. I began to spiral, wondering what any of this could even been for. When I was at my lowest, that's when they came. Large extraterrestrial ships appeared above the planet, their massive size forcing the entire world to take notice of them without a chance to be ignored. And even better, after that, the sickness began to appear. The spawn became their conquest over our planet. Truly, there wasn't a more exciting time to be alive. MGI was formed, and suddenly the demand for those left behind by the space program was through the roof. Hired by MGI, working besides doctors of medicine and biochemistry, we began manufacturing the infrastructure and techniques used to create the fresh wave of magical girls. Captured spawn was studied. Alien diseases were being studied right here. I felt at the time I was so lucky to have been born, just at the right time to be able to experience it all. Spending my days walking towards a goal that would launch us into the stars. All the while getting to work alongside our creations, the magical girls whose species was entirely their own sect. I wouldn't hold that sentiment for long. Nearing the 1-year mark of the Project MGI, came into possession of a magical girl of unknown origins. At the time, documentation was poor, unlike today where a record of every infected cocoon is logged. She was different, unlike any before, and the reason escaped us. So trapped in our ways, in our own heads, blinded by science, we never cared to listen closely to her words and who she praised for which her powers originated from. Venus. She was MGI's first time meeting the third party in this galactic war. Meeting her, hearing her speak with the planet she worshipped, it was too much for me. I woke up that day. The beauty of it all was lost on me after that. Infection and new lives as magical girls. It never intrigued me beyond its origins. But being able to hear the voice of a celestial? Finding out I was robbed of this chance? I didn't know for sure at the time. I picked Saturn. I rebranded myself. And I began my worship for her. I locked myself in the study and did nothing but pray to be blessed by Saturn and granted the gifts her sisters granted to others. Nothing. I never gained a response. Not even a rejection that I could be blessed with. I spiraled for the second time in my life. I had been born in a time to witness the heavens erupt with extraterrestrials. Yet, I stood here too old to be chosen to become the avatar to them. I had to watch as the planets I loved so much held eyes only for the youth that they could transform into their avatars. An adult man like myself could never hope to have Saturn turned my way. I never stopped worshipping, though. A sliver of my soul shall always dream that the next day will bring my transformation. It's foolish, but it keeps me going. My life's third spiral would come shortly after I recovered from the second. Venus turned on us randomly one day. Was she under the order from her celestial body? Who knows? But I stood there as Venus was beheaded in a gory fashion by people she had once referred to as her friends just yesterday. I fell to my knees in that lab as MGI doctors rushed around in a panic, as government bodies arrived to take her remains away to an unknown location. Blood soaked and dried into my lab coat, and my hands shook in horror for days after. I had witnessed the first death of an avatar, perhaps the only death to this day. What does it mean for an avatar to die? To lose a connection with a planet? Had Venus gone from this place for good? At the time, we weren't just truly sure how many avatars each celestial had. For all we knew, this was all there would ever be for Venus on Earth. More than that, though, I was forced to see the death of a child with my own eyes. I knew magical girls died fighting Spawn. We slaughtered thousands, and occasionally would lose a few. But that was numbers on a spreadsheet. This was blood splashed on my cheek. It was so real now. I was forced to confront what I had been a part of from the start. I had to leave this place. I would rather die than continue to be a gear in their machine, which grounded up youthful magical girls into nothing. We robbed them of their families, and I rationalized it as for the greater good. But their new lives, I began to question just how good those really even were. Withdrawals so terrible they would scream until they fainted and transformed into Spawn. Girls losing themselves to the beast inside and harming their friends just because they forgot to take a pill one too many days. In the best case, they were nothing but pawns. Perfect soldiers, fighting in a war they had nothing to gain from besides living another day. Was this really worth of being called living? I had all these ideas bubbling inside me, and I had lost the one avatar I felt I would ever have access to. I began to fall into a state worse than I ever had before. So much regret over everything possible. Why did I help create this system? Why didn't I ask Venus more? Why do I continue to fall short of Saturn's reciprocation? What am I doing? Why am I doing it? That's about the time I met Mare by accident. Or perhaps, was it fate? She was a small, silent girl, had been brought into our lab due to her unique ability for teleportation. An ability MGI wanted to capitalize on, the best way we could figure out. MGI was prepared even in the event we weren't able to harness her ability. At that point, we'd move on to our backup plan of chopping her into little pieces and begin making teleportation devices out of them. I have no doubt we would have done it to her too, if we'd gotten the specifics down. It was that attitude that broke me. MGI didn't care about this girl. She was a tool, an item that could be monopolized and used to increase their power. And what was I? A tool they would use along with the others to shape this girl into their desired shape. But that day, I said, to hell with them! To hell with it all! And so I injected myself with a concoction of spawn and other medicines, hoping to bring my pitiful life to an end. Unfortunately, or rather, fortunately for me now, I did not die. Instead, I would come to thank Lab Celebrity Guardian Cross for returning me to my life. When I woke up from my long drug-induced nap, Cross really gave me an earful. She also dumped a bucket of... Let's just leave it as she made sure I knew I owed her big time. We got to talking after that, and she told me something that has stuck with me ever since.
Dude, you're an adult. What is MGI? Your mom? Get out of here if that's what you want. Worried about some kid? Damn straight you should be. That's an adult's whole job. You seriously thought killing yourself was an acceptable outcome? What about the girl you wanted to protect? What's good in abandoning her? Your life as a sacrifice won't bring her anything. Do what you can to live out your beliefs as an adult. Don't go dying in despair instead.
She also threw in a lot of bleh sounds in there, making dying motions, but that's besides the point. She was right, though. I had the power to do something, however small it was. Saturn would never notice me if I died, but perhaps if I could make enough noise on Earth, others will take notice. The best part about having a teleportation ability is the fact it can help you escape to just about anywhere. All I really had to do was free Mare from where she was being kept. It was a standard room, but it was no different than a prison cell in practice. I waited until nightfall, when the majority of staff had left for the night. At night, you could only need to worry about security and other night staff who watched the connected dorms. But getting into the lab rooms wouldn't be any problem for me. When I finally properly met her that night, standing there in the doorway as I looked across the room at a girl who sat on that bed, that was when I knew I was doing the right thing. Mare didn't seem interested in leaving when I asked her. At that point, I was still only a scientist she had met an offhanded amount of times, after all. As we talked, I began to learn just what her current condition was. She lacked any memories of who she once was, and lacked any sense of interest in anything. I was worried this was the result of some sort of experiment or test procedure performed on her, but she claimed there hadn't been anything out of the ordinary done to her. She left me quite puzzled on what it was. I wouldn't say wrong, maybe different about her. Regardless, I still pled my case for why she should leave with me, giving her a whole life story spiel, and told her how much greater of a life she could live on the outside. She didn't really take much convincing, but I really would have liked for her to seem more enthusiastic about being rescued. After that, we left. Mare opened a portal to a faraway area I was aware was marked as dangerous. Next I knew, we were stepping into a wooded area, and into our lives alongside one another. We ended up meeting a certain fallen magical girl who was responsible for this castle, as well as practically handing the Den Lord title over, actually. But that's a story for another time. I've rebelled on too long. He raised his glass to his lips, taking a drink after all that talking. Wait, Clarice began a question. So, what's the deal with the Den Lord title? Someone else handed it to you? The credit? Yes. I don't have any combat abilities, and haven't imagined Mare trying to hurt anyone with teleportation portals. No, we had a little help from a friend who was happy enough to leave us this castle and domain. He stroked his chin. That would have been more than 2 years ago now. How time flies. Huh, Mare?
Yes, thank you.
She nodded, a cup of juice leaving her lips as she let out an exhale of satisfaction. Dr. Ajil took another sip of his drink. Napoleon is their name. He lowered his glass. I think you'd get along if you ever met them. Napoleon? Is it named after the historical French general and ruler? King asked. Ajil chuckled. Named after? They practically think they are the real Napoleon the way they act. A real class act is what they are. And this Napoleon just let you have the castle and entire den? Why would they go to all the work of conquering one just to leave? Clarice questioned. Ah, Dr. Ajil smiled. That's just the sort of thing you have to learn to expect when it comes to this faction of Fallen. We're all bonded by some sort of obsession with love. Love, you say? Clarice repeated. Quite right. We all have some form of love we are reaching for. From my desire for celestial attention, all the way to Aurelia's boy. Ajil paused, almost seeming to choke on his words. He cleared his throat and finished. Or, like how our Napoleon is searching for their... What was her name again?
Josephine, thank you.
Mare chimed in. Right, he smiled. Napoleon thinks they have to find their equivalent Josephine. What that truly means is really something only Napoleon knows, honestly. Huh. Clarice and King nodded. There really was so many types of people out there. I suppose if I could pick a historical figure to model my life after, Napoleon's a pretty cool pick. I don't remember much of anything about my time in school, but I feel like I enjoyed that section of history as much as any other interesting parts. I hope I eventually get to meet this Napoleon. I would like to see what a living Napoleon would look like, especially since we're all girls. The meal continues on, everyone getting their fill until the dinner was finished. We had come to learn quite a bit about quite a lot, yet still Aurelia evades our grasp. End of chapter 38.